This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. We turn now to Gaza, where Al Jazeera is reporting Israeli forces have killed at least 9 people who are waiting for aid in Gaza City. 20 injured people were taken to Al-Shifa Hospital. This comes as Israel continues to restrict aid coming into Gaza, which is on the brink of famine. The UN's reporting one truck was recently denied access to Gaza because it contained scissors inside medical kits. UNRWA head Philippe Lazzarini criticized the decision, saying, quote, medical scissors are now added to a long list of banned items the Israeli authorities classify as for dual use. He went on to say, the list includes basic and life-saving items from anesthetics, solar lights, oxygen cylinders and ventilators, water cleaning tablets, cancer medicines, and maternity kits, unquote. Meanwhile, an aid ship bound for Gaza has set sail from Cyprus with 200 tons of food supplies. The UAE-funded mission was organized by 2 aid groups, World Central Kitchen and Open Arms. Inside Gaza, Palestinians mark the first day of Ramadan Monday. For more, we go directly to Rafah, to Yousef Hammash. He is advocacy officer in Gaza for the Norwegian Refugee Council. Welcome back to Democracy Now! Thank you so much for joining us, Yousef. Can you explain what's happening on the ground right now? Talk about the issue of famine and hunger and what you think needs to happen.
First of all, thanks for hosting me again and giving me the chance. And unfortunately, since we last spoke until now, nothing have changed, only except for the wars. More families have been displaced by the ongoing bombardment all across Gaza. Situation in Rafah is deteriorating day by day. We are not able to fulfill the basic needs for families here. People are scattered in the streets everywhere, so it's unimaginable situation for displaced families in Rafah. And we have different situation for the middle area and the northern part of Gaza, which unfortunately, even from media, are kind of abounded, while families and children on the verge of a famine, and over 25 people were killed from hunger. The situation in Gaza is going into unclear vision and in the horizon. We don't understand what's coming next. All what we are having is a daily basis of madness, violence, bombardment, and a death toll that's increasing on a daily basis. And unfortunately, so far, we are not seeing any real intervention from outside, so at least we could have a glimmer of hope that this will end soon.
And Yousef Hammash, how do you respond to Prime Minister Netanyahu's claim that denying that there's starvation and alleging that it is groups under Hamas in Gaza that are preventing the delivery of aid?
I work for the Norwegian Refugee Council, and we operate on the ground, mainly in Rafah currently, because we don't have any access for the northern part of Gaza, and we didn't see any evidence or related to these allegations. All what we are looking for is open the checkpoints, the Israeli restrictions that have been put to split Gaza into 3 pieces now. We don't have access for Khan Yunis now, and there is no access to Gaza City and the northern part of Gaza. And we are talking about over 500,000 who are trapped there, dying to fulfill their children's basic needs. We had the first day of Ramadan yesterday, and I was reaching out for friends and colleagues in the northern part of Gaza, and I was trying to understand exactly what they could find to have iftar. Mainly a piece of bread with tea. The situation in the south is also chaos and chaotic and getting worse every day, but in the northern part of Gaza, people are literally on the verge of a famine. People are dying to find a piece of bread there, and it's unacceptable that we start to put these allegations here and there. There is a need on the ground that's very clear. If we go on social media outlets, wherever you go, you could see exactly what's going on there. So it's unrealistic, and it's not acceptable actually just to ignore and deny that there is a famine in the north.
I wanted to go to Khalil Abu Ziada, a Palestinian currently in the Al-Shati camp in Gaza.
My feeling is that of a person who was displaced from his house. I'm 71 years old and I have never experienced Ramadan with this feeling. It's an awful feeling. At times like this during Ramadan, I used to prepare the dining table to eat at sunset. But today there's no food and I don't have money to get food for iftar at sunset.
So, Yousef Hammash, the United States, President Biden has been authorizing the dropping of food, airdropping it. 5 people were killed, crushed to death by a malfunctioning parachute that was carrying one of the food drops. And now has proposed this pier where they say they'll get food in. Unclear how, considering what Israel's been doing. All of their ports of entry or all of their crossings are closed and not allowing food to come in from Rafah. Why would the pier be any different, especially given that the U.S. continues to provide the bombs and the ammunition that is dropped on the Palestinians?
That's what makes it, you don't understand exactly what's going on. First of all, any help to feed even one single family or one single child in the northern part of Gaza or in the south is very welcomed and much appreciated. But let's go be realistic. Spending all of these efforts, building the boat or airdropping, which is not efficient, unfortunately, and you have mentioned exactly what happened when that incident killing 5 people. And imagining that all of media show all of that, what we saw related to the airdropping was less than 2 aid trucks. Why the United States didn't use its influence to its closest ally, that while it's weaponizing them and using that influence in a proper way to force them to impose on them to remove restriction on aid. And it's going to be more simple, more realistic, and more efficient if the United States have pushed the Israelis to allow aid truck to go into people in need in the northern part of Gaza and Gaza City. And imagine that distance between Rafah crossing and the northern part of Gaza is half an hour by drive. So why we need to spend all that amount of effort building a seaport or airdropping while we have a realistic options that put in front of us, but there is just some restriction by the Israelis, and so that's what makes it unimaginable. Why we are going to that option while we have different options on the ground and it's still in place, running and functioning in place since almost the beginning of this chaos. The only issue that we are facing in delivering the aid on the ground is the restriction that the Israelis put in it for Gaza City and the northern part of Gaza.
And Yousef Hammash, how are you faring, your family and your own children under these conditions? What kind of aid do you have access to?
In Rafah there is kind of affordability, but unfortunately the prices also are not affordable somehow. There is some people who could get some of the food items, especially into Rafah. There is kind of availability, but unfortunately the inflation of prices make it unaffordable for the majority of the families here. We are living day by day here. Our cycle of life is one day we fulfill our basic needs as responsibles toward our children and extended families, and then we will look for the next day. As an example, yesterday I had to search after my working hours up to the iftar timing just to look for some vegetables, and I couldn't find it. Maybe I was late because there is 1.5 million are in Rafah, this 55 square kilometer, and we are competing to find food for our families.
Yousef Hammash, we thank you so much for being with us. Advocacy officer in Gaza for the Norwegian Refugee Council, joining us from Rafah. This is Democracy Now! I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. As we continue to report on Gaza, we're joined by Francesca Albanese, United Nations Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territory. Welcome back to Democracy Now! Joining us from Tunis today. As you listen to the report on the ground in Rafah, And you hear also, in addition to international groups, a dozen Israeli human rights organizations are demanding of the ICJ, the International Court of Justice, that Israel abide by its demand, request, you can explain whether it's legally binding, to allow humanitarian aid into Gaza, and Netanyahu's denial that there is a famine problem.
Hi, Amy and Juan, and thank you for having me back. First of all, it's very painful to listen to the testimonies from Gaza, because as someone who has seen this tragedy unfolding, this catastrophe unfolding from the very beginning, and knowing that the situation in Gaza was already desperate for many before the 7th of October, I hear them in pain, especially at the time that is holy, like the Ramadan. I'm glad Israeli organizations are forcefully asking for compliance with international law, because this is what has been violated through and through. International law sets clear obligation on warring parties to deliver aid and allow and facilitate the rapid and unimpeded passage of humanitarian relief to the civilians in need in situation of armed conflict. And this is all the more serious in Gaza, given that on the 26th of January, the International Court of Justice issued an order that requests Israel to take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in Gaza. This has not happened. On the contrary, after the 26th of January, we have seen, on the one hand, increasing fighting, increasing shelling and killing of civilians desperately gathering for aid, the bombing of convoys and airdropped food. Although the airdrop food, in any case, is dangerous, as we have seen, it has killed people in Gaza, and it's a hazard. It cannot deliver the aid to everyone in need. On the other hand, we have seen also the deliberate targeting of UNRWA, which is the only organization who can orderly deliver humanitarian aid and food, on top of the increasing restrictions on the aid that can come in. In the face of all these, Amy, I certainly welcome the opening of a humanitarian corridor, of a maritime corridor between Cyprus and the Gaza Strip. At the same time, this risks to be a drop in the ocean, as if it was said before. The crossing between Israel and Gaza are not open, and if humanitarian access is not fully guaranteed within the scope of a ceasefire, because ultimately the only way to save lives is to stop bombing the Gaza Strip.
Well, Francesca Albanese, we've been hearing now for weeks that negotiations were proceeding. Any day there would be a ceasefire, any day, but the days keep passing and the war continues. Do you feel that the United States and the Western powers are doing enough to pressure Israel on the issue of ceasefire?
I see the United States and most Western powers doing enough to continue this situation, this monstrosity, because there is no other way to qualify this. And certainly not enough is being done to prevent it, because the only thing at this point, and again, I want to stress once again, there is an order of the ICJ which imposes obligations not just on Israel, but also on third states. And these obligations are being violated. They're sent back to they refer back to the Genocide Convention. So it's very critical what they are doing and not doing, and this might entail responsibilities for these states as well. But what should be done is an arms embargo right now and sanctions, because Israel is not in compliance with critical measures ordered by the ICJ, and this is not something that should be treated with negligence.
Francesca Albanese, do you know why Karim Khan of the International Criminal Court, the other court outside of the International Court of Justice, has not brought Netanyahu up on charges? He immediately did after Putin invaded Ukraine. I think something like 10,000 Ukrainians with a far larger population have died, and that in itself is horrific. But we're talking about 30,000, more than 30,000 Palestinians, all agree, overwhelmingly civilian. And yet, the International Criminal Court has not brought charges.
I cannot say with certainty because I don't know what his motives are. I want to imagine that his team is diligently preparing arrest warrants for anyone who needs to receive an arrest warrant. The fact that it has not happened yet is shocking. But to be honest, for me, it's shocking that there had been no effective move by the ICC, even before the 7th of October, because the continuous building of settlements in the West Bank and the Gaza, and East Jerusalem, the taking of land, the advancing of the annexation plan, these were already war crimes falling squarely in the jurisdiction of the ICC. So there has been a delay in the situation of Palestine that might also be understandable as resenting the political pressure that is on anyone operating at the international level. So I don't want to put the burden only on the ICC prosecutor. There is a clear double standard when it comes to Palestine, also possibly resented across other parts of the global south. But clearly, the fact that in Ukraine we have had 0.2% of the population killed, and in Gaza 1.3% of the population killed, and 4.5% of the population either killed, reported missing, or injured, and no arrest warrant, in the face of genocidal incitement and clear orders given that have targeted the entire population as a whole as responsible for what happened, the tragic events of the 7th of October. This is disappointing, to say the least.
We have less than a minute. UNRWA, you talked about the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees. Although more than a dozen countries, 16, 17 countries, stopped funding. Canada and Sweden have resumed Israel not presenting evidence that they said UNRWA was involved with Hamas. Yet the United States, by far the largest funder of UNRWA, has not. What is the effect of this in 30 seconds?
The effect is that it undermines the operations of UNRWA across the region, not only in Gaza, but the entire Near East, in Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, the West Bank and East Jerusalem. And there is no legal basis to do so. So this only aggravates the responsibility of the United States.
Francesca Albanese, I want to thank you for being with us, United Nations Special Rapporteur on the occupied Palestinian territory, today speaking to us from Tunis, Tunisia.